Chances for questions if you've got any afterwards. If you have a burning question you want to ask in the middle of my speech to try and wake me up a bit, just raise your hand and we can try that as well. I'm going to start a little bit about how we started, the expectations and reality of running a news portal in Croatia, how to build a niche, dealing with comments online and what I call the wall of hate, the importance of titles and the importance of kakvi su komentari, how we finance our portal, whether strategies of clickbait or quality work best, how we find stories, a little bit about a day in the life of a TCN journalist. It's not quite as exotic as it maybe looks on the portal. Understanding a little bit about Google Analytics, and then I'm going to talk about the intern program at the end. Does that sound super interesting for 9 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So, 3 things I'd say just to start is you have big advantages over me. A, you're young, but I didn't start writing online until I was 41 years old. So I had no history of writing before that. So you guys already have a 20-year head start over me. So that's congratulations for that. I also don't have any formal training in journalism. So and you guys are going to come out with a degree, so you're already way, way ahead of me. And the third thing I would say is that there is nothing special about me, about what we do. And honestly, if I can do it, so can you. The only thing that it needs from your side, apart from your talent, is a little bit of an idea, a niche, and a lot of determination and hard work. And if you can apply that with what you've learned at university, with your youthful enthusiasm, which I'm losing at my age, then there is no reason why you can't go on to do that and to do very, very well. I started, so I was 41 years old. I was a lovely family on the island of Bar, two young daughters, and I was looking for a job. And it's my Croatian is, I speak Croatian, but people laugh when I do. So for me to try and have a job with fluent Croatian was not really a possibility. And so I learned that there was a possibility maybe I could make a living writing online. I come across this concept called content farms, where you write for a big website for free about your topic, and everything you write about has advertising on the page, and then you would share with Google AdSense the revenue that came from your articles on your page. And what the website offered was very good Google ranking, lots of readership. And what you offered was quality original content. So it seemed like a good little thing. And the advantage for me was that I could work from home. I could sit in the island of Bar in my bathrobe, sitting there working all day, and off I went. And to me, this was a wonderful salvation. And people on this website were earning $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month from what we call recurring revenue. So if you write a really good article about how to get a credit card, and you're number 1 on Google, how many people around the world are looking for that particular information, how to get a credit card? And so all the adverts there are very valuable, and so you make lots of money. So to me it seemed like a really, really cool idea, and if I could just write a certain number of articles, I would make this recurring revenue, and my life would be sorted. Unfortunately, I chose the niche of Croatia, which doesn't have the same appeal in terms of advertisers that credit cards do. And but I started and I learned, and it was a really empowering experience to write my first article online, which was 9 years ago yesterday, about driving habits in Albania. That was my first ever article. And this website would give you statistics in real time. You could see how many people had read your article. And literally I was sitting in Jelsa in a cafe at the end of October. It was the clocks had just gone back, and it was dark and it was cold, and 12 people within 2 minutes had read my articles. And as a writer, this was just extraordinary. And I was hooked. And then I noticed that it would give you all the information about any websites that were linking to your article. I was astonished. After half an hour, there was a link from the Vancouver Sun in Canada. And I was like, how is it possible? I'm sitting here writing about driving in Albania, and within half an hour, the Vancouver Sun is linking to my article. This is just incredible. And so I started this journey. I went to the Vancouver Sun, and I found there was an article about a bomb in Greece. And then there was a little box in the article called regional news. And because they had no other news about Greece, the website I worked for had this relationship with the Vancouver Sun, because it was a Canadian portal. And so Albania was close to Greece, and so technology, they took my little article, and there I was, driving in Albania, not for the faint-hearted, in Canada. And it was incredible. And so I was just like every 2 minutes refreshing how many people. And this is how I started. And then the other box that you saw was how much money we earned. And that didn't go as quickly, unfortunately. In fact, I would say that my experience of writing for this website was a financial disaster, because I would, every day they would give you your earnings for the day, and we had this wonderful forum on the website where you could ask experienced writers how to do this, what about this, and some of them were making, $200 a day. And I would, at 9 o'clock in the morning, you would refresh it and it would tell you your earnings and $1.35. But I wasn't disheartened. I thought if I could just keep going, I'd make it and stuff. But what happened was this forum was the best university of my life, because here I had this amazing niche of amazing writers, 20,000 writers all over the world. And they were very generous in their help for young noobs or newbies, as I was. And so I was not afraid to ask questions, and I was learning how to do a blog, how to create an app, how to write a guidebook, all these different things I was learning as I went away. And then in February 2011, less than 4 months after I had this new journey and all this excitement and $1.35 coming in, but it was growing, disaster happened, and Google did one of their biggest, probably their biggest ever changes in algorithm, and it was called Panda. And Google decided overnight, well not overnight, but they implemented it overnight, and they said, we are going after websites which are just producing crap, like just content, with no substance to them really. And we're going to punish these websites with our rankings and push them right down the rankings. And the website I worked for had 20,000 writers. And so there were some people that were just going keywords just to get clicks, just to get money. And the actual content was very, very poor. The stuff I was writing, I like to think, was really good quality, but I couldn't influence what they were writing. And so Google actually made a press conference, and they showed an example of what was wrong with the internet. And they used the website I was writing for as the poster child. This is what is wrong with the internet. And so overnight, we lost 94% of our traffic. I was writing about Hua. I was the only person writing about Hua. And suddenly I went from number 1 to page 14. And people who were making their recurring revenue of $3,000 a month were just putting their kids through college in Arizona, were now making $30 a month. And it was very unfair, but that was the reality. And my $1.35 a day went down to like 1 cent a day. So it was just, it was a total disaster. But what it taught me was that I have to rely on myself. And also, Google will always change the rules, but Google will always respect, or at least I thought it would, one thing: fresh, original, niche-driven content. So if you could find a niche and you could make that your own, and you could give it content every single day and it was quality content, Google would recognize that and would reward you. And so the strategy I learned from all my university online from this forum was that find the right niche, conquer the niche, own the niche. And when you own the niche, you become the authority, and your money-making opportunities from that niche are many, many more than just AdSense. So if you take an example of tourism, let's take Croatia for an example, then if you become the #1 authority for Croatia, you have tourist boards will want to work with you because you have the audience. You will have speedboat transfers that want to work with you for a commission because you recommend them. You have hotels that want to invite you to stay so you can write about them. So you have a lifestyle aspect of that. There are so many different aspects of how you can make a living if you control the niche. The important thing about a niche though is you have to do your research and you have to figure out what are you offering which is better than anybody else? What is it you have that is unique? And also, very, very crucially, is the market big enough to support your niche? There is no point doing a website about purple earrings worn in December, a stupid example, because maybe a few people will search for that, but not many. There's no point doing a website about Manchester United, because you're never going to be #1 in the niche, even though they're a terrible football team anyway. But even though you might have great content, you have such competition. And so there are tools available online where you can find out what is the right size niche that will bring you the traffic, and where is the supply of information less than the demand. And if you can find those things, then you can build what's called a niche website. And a niche website can be literally about anything. It can be about cemeteries. It can be about pet clothing, because all you need to think about is supply and demand of information. So if you find people that are, if it's Justin Bieber or whatever it is, there's always something. People will search for these things, for example. Now, if you can write, it's a challenge, but if you can write interesting content about this kind of thing, then Google is going to respect that, and Google is going to put you to the top of the search engines. And so when you're at the top of the search engine, people looking to buy that are going to come, oh, what's this? This is interesting, I've got this and this and this. And then you have your Amazon, buy through Amazon or buy through wherever, and you get your commission and so on like that. So this is how I started, and but when I started, I thought I was going to do a website about Hvar, because Hvar is the most gorgeous island on the planet, as you know, and if you haven't been, you must. But they have five different tourist boards: Sučuraj, Vrboska, Jelsa, Stari Hvar, and they all had their own website. They all had their own Otok, Vrboska, Otok, Sučuraj, and none of them worked together or presented themselves as one destination. And I thought if I could do one website for the whole island, and if I could talk about not just the beaches and the nightlife and the restaurants, but what's happening in Vrtic, about the olive harvest, about the wines, about what happens in winter and things like that. Morning. Then if I could do all this, then I could give people a picture that the island was alive 12 months a year, and there were many, many more reasons to visit. And so I would make it the most interesting website about the island. And if I did that, I would have lots of traffic. And if I had lots of traffic, I would have people at restaurants that would want to work with me, tourist boards that would want to work with me, and so on. And I would make $1 million, and I would be sat in my bathrobe in Jelsa, and life would be perfect. So I went to see the tourist boards, and they all said to me, we love your idea, you have our full support. And I said, fantastic. So let's talk about money. And they said, no, full support does not mean financial support. Here is a CD of photographs, we will support you any way we can, but no money. And so I was feeling a bit depressed, and then I had a coffee with a friend of mine who runs a tour agency, and he said, listen, what you're doing is great. If you would promote the island as one, if you would promote Zagreb as town, as a destination, and if you would support our tourist agency by writing about it, we will give you €500 a year. And I was like, you're crazy. And he said, yeah. So I went back to my cafe where I had a beer every day, and I told the story to the cafe owner in Jelsa, and he said, I'll give you 500 too, what you're doing is great. And I suddenly realized that if I could get enough private businesses that had an interest in supporting us, and for them it would be about growing the destination, but also about promoting them, then I could be 100% independent, and I could really then use that money to feed my family, but also to build this story of Hua and everything else, and then other things would happen. And so I've now written, don't ask me to name them all, but over 9,000 articles about the island of Hua. Nobody in the history of the world has ever written more crap than I have about Hua. And so what's happened is then I've become known as the leading authority on the island. And so 2 years ago, the New York Times contacted me, and we brought the New York Times to Hua to meet the mayor. The Sunday Times came to did a big feature. They came through me, not through the tourist boards. Travel and Leisure, the same sort of thing. People pitch me ideas about Hua the whole time. And so this is something that, I'm not doing anything amazing. I'm just taking a niche, and I'm murdering that niche so that it's mine and nobody else's. And I'm doing that through lots of hard work, lots of talking to people and so on like that. And honestly, I'm doing nothing incredible. If this is your passion, go for it. I guarantee that niche is out there and you can make it yours. And so then I basically, just to quickly move on, I went to, somebody said we should do a portal for Split. I went to the Split Tourist Board. The Split Tourist Board said, we love it, we know who you are, you're doing a great job on Hua, you have our full support. And you can have anything you want apart from one thing, never ask me for money. Yeah? So there was a support thing. Long story short, we have now portals for inland Dalmatia, Zagreb and places like that. But then I realised in about 3 years after I started that if I wanted to be really successful, and if not, that's what I thought, if I wanted to really fill a niche now that we were bigger, that Croatia has been in the EU since 2013, and this was now 2015. And crazy but true, Croatia did not have an English language news portal about Croatia, despite being an EU country, despite being a huge tourist destination. And I thought, how hard would it be to create a news portal? You just need a few stories, the Croatian media's out there, everything else. And so I decided to start Croatian News. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I also didn't realise at the time how little I knew about Croatia. For me, Croatia was the island of Hvar, which I knew better than most locals. It was Split, and Split was three things. It was transit to Zagreb, hospital for the kids, shopping for the family, but always Zagreb. Yeah? So I never ever knew anything about Split. And then I knew Zagreb, the train station, the bus station, and Banja Luka, and that was it. And that was really my knowledge of Croatia. I had absolutely no idea. I'd never been to Dubrovnik, I'd never been to Istria, these places like this. And here was me thinking, news portal, whole Croatia, no problem. But also I was very naive, still am, in my knowledge of Croatia, because my Croatia was this beautiful island with all happy stories about tourism. And for example, I'd never heard of the word Uhljeb when I started my portal. And it's funny, but actually, you know, can you imagine somebody trying to write with authority about Croatia and not knowing about what an Uhljeb was, for example. I really wanted to, I saw my target market as the Croatian diaspora, all those people in Australia and so on, because they have this, love for the homeland, Bogi, Hrvati and all that, and they don't have the language despite being big patriots and stuff. So, and there was no real service for them. So I thought if I could get that market, and if I could get the diplomatic market here, and all the expats here, and then you have all the tourists, if we're writing about tourism, then that would be a really nice niche. And there must be some money out there for that from somewhere. Yeah? And I want just to show how useless I was. I wanted to do a really, really good first interview with somebody really, really important who would really impress everybody that we were serious. And so I managed to get the foreign minister, Croatia's foreign minister, to do an interview. And I thought, this is going to really stand up and be noticed in Australia. They're going to be cheering that we have this thing. And just to show how little I knew, like the foreign minister at the time was Vesna Pusic, who is not the biggest favourite down in the diaspora in Australia. And so on the first day, I lost about 30% of my potential audience just because I'd chosen the wrong person to interview. I interviewed Josipovic when he was president candidate. I had no idea which party he was. I didn't really know what HDZ or SDP were. And one of the things my wife, who's here today, was saying is that, you know, one of the things she liked about me was that I had no idea about the crap that was going on in Croatia, and so we could have a normal household. And now we've got just, it's full of it because of the job I do, and now we're totally immersed in politics. I apologise for that. So, starting News was really interesting and challenging, and the one comfort I had was that in order to be the best, I wasn't competing with the BBC. Okay, so whatever niche or whatever thing you go to, your competition is only as good as your competition. So if you're going to try and compete for the Manchester United website, you have to be exceptional. If you try and compete for this, you're probably, you know, you've got a good chance of being number one without trying too hard. And so for me to produce daily content in English was really, with one or two other translators and other writers which I managed to bring into the project, was not that hard. And I really don't think we were that good when we started. We were certainly very focused on Dalmatia because that's what I knew and so on. But when I started, I asked people and I said, listen, this is a project I want to do, and I would like to use this as an opportunity to present the best about Croatia. Yes, we have problems, and let's look at the problems, but let's do it in a constructive way. You know, there's no, because I'm a huge fan of, and a good friend with Matija Babic from Index. He's a total asshole at times, and he, you know, he'll admit that. But I think without Index, Croatia would be a different place. And there's a lot of crap on Index, and they do that for the clicks, because that's what finances things like that. But one of the things about Index that I don't like is that they just love the negativity. They just love negative, because people here in Croatia and the rest of the world they love the negative stuff. They'll always click on that, the clickbait stuff and everything else like that. And I don't know if you remember, but during the World Cup, when somehow you beat England, Index said Thursday before the World Cup final, they said, we have decided to be happy until Tuesday. And we're only going to do happy stories on Index. And because of my job, I'm on Index all the time. And I can't tell you what a different Croatia it was for those 5 days. Not because of what's happening on the streets, but just reading. I mean, there was some brilliant journalism from Index in a positive way. And it just gave you a little sort of feeling of how things could be in Croatia, if everybody was pushing the right way and if all the corruption was out and everything else. And it was a really, for me, an amazing thing. And then on Tuesday, very clear. And we were back to how we were. But for me, I've never believed in just criticising, because if you just criticise, you just bring this negativity. And if you criticise and you criticise in a way that is constructive and you offer some solutions, then at least you can sleep well at night, and at least some people then will listen to what you're saying and respect you more. But as a foreigner in Croatia, if you criticise, you quickly learn that you have no right to criticise because you're a foreigner, and you should fuck off back to London, and you should go and screw the Queen, and you should deal with your Brexit shit and all that stuff. And so this was something that I learned very quickly, and I call it the wall of hate. And when I started Total Bar, I was very conscious of the fact that everything I wrote was locals were going to read it, and if locals were upset by it, then I would feel terrible about that. And so I analysed every single comment on Facebook that came, and I was really, oh my God, was that? Did they mean that? Did they mean this? And I was really, really kind of sort of anxious about everything. And when I studied Total Croatian News, that changed, not because I changed, but because my audience changed. And no longer was I writing about happy hua, but I was talking about Croatian reality. And one day I wrote something like Dubrovnik was beautiful, something like that. And somebody told me to fuck off back to London. What right did I have to have an opinion on that? And that is just the most extreme example I can give you of just the abuse that people get. Now, if you start having an opinion, if you mention the word Tito, if you criticise something in diaspora, if you criticise something by Jose, if you mention it and refer to it, you know yourselves what the commentary are like. Yeah? And what happens with the commentary is that, as you'll know yourself, many people, when they read the media here, they will read the title, they will know it's from Index, so the message is going to be this, it's from Bradbury, the message is going to be this, and the first question is Kaku's commentary, and people won't even read the article, they will just go straight to the comments. And as you also know, various interested parties pay people to write comments all day. So you have these fake profiles, and many fake profiles, and they just put all this crap out there and everything else. And if you're sensitive and you want to be a journalist in this country, don't do it. Don't do it. But the only way to deal with that, I think, is to embrace it. And now, if I don't get any hateful comments every day, I almost feel that, you know, I haven't had my breakfast, or there's something missing in my life, because that sort of is what pushes you to go forward. And if you don't get the hateful comments, you're not doing your job correctly, I don't think. And the other thing I would say to you is be very careful, if you're a journalist, about engaging with your audience, because a lot of times you do it with the best of intentions, and as soon as you give a little bit of yourself, all these vultures that want to destroy you because they see you as a threat, because you're telling the truth or you're exposing something, they will pick on that and they will pick that apart and something like that. So I even on my personal Facebook, I mean, I'm very active on Facebook, but I very rarely comment, unless it's like with a friend or so on. But the only time I let myself comment now is when I've got somebody who's really attacking me and telling me what a terrible portal I have and how useless I am and how useless my portal is, or fake news. You know, I'll just write, the only thing that gives me the strength to get out of bed every morning is the knowledge that you cannot stop reading. And I have a 100% success rate in never having a response to that. Okay? And that's the way that I deal with comments. Because, you know, the number of people that tell me how terrible my portal is because it's directly offended. It's not great. I'm not saying we have the best portal. We don't. But the number of people that tell me that, and you just say, indeed, or you just say, the quality of a portal is measured by its readership. Something like that. And you just put it back to them, like, why are you reading this? You know? And, you know, it has an amazing effect. So, but titles are crucial. Because if you think you're scrolling through your Facebook feed or whatever feed you use these days, and you're just bombarded with information, and you can have the most amazing article that you spent weeks working on, you've got all the pictures right, all the links right, you've got a really good article, and then you don't spend the time on the title, nobody's going to bother to come through to that, because they've got so many other things that are like that. Which brings me to one of the big debates in journalism and online writing, which is clickbait versus quality. So most portals have an emphasis on money from AdSense, or they'll generate money from clicks. And so the theory is the more clicks you have, the more money you're going to make, which is kind of true in a sense. But what happens over time, in my experience, is the more clicks you have that are clickbait, that are pretty useless articles, the less trust you will have in the reader. And so what will happen with that particular, next time you see, that's that website, I'm not going to click on that. You know? And you find a lot of these 10 things to see before you die, 10 best things to do before next Tuesday, you know, 10 amazing things that nobody knows about in Zagreb and all stuff, and it's all crap, right? And so I decided to have a war on lists, and I wanted to make our website different from that. And so rather than, because for me it was easy to say, BuzzFeed says 10 best things about Far, and I would do a little introduction, I'd link it to that, I would get a ton of hits because people wanted to read that shit, you know? But then people go, there's nothing to this after some time. And so what I decided to do was to do something different, to do something called 25 things to know about Croatia. So I wanted to take Varaždin, and I wanted to do 25 things to know about Varaždin, including things that even some locals wouldn't know, but they were so well researched that there was such good information that they would become the standard for information about that destination. And so we did, and they've all been very, very successful, and a lot of people then have learned about the destination. And what it's done is it's built a lot of trust, because people go, when Total Operation News has a list, it's a proper list, and I can learn something. And so this is a longer term strategy, because that takes time to build that up versus these clickbait things. But in the long term, the readership is not stupid. You know, people know that something like BuzzFeed, this is just going to give me a happy feel that are 2 minutes nothing. This is actually going to teach me something, and this is what I want to do. Which brings me to the most amazing thing I've ever learned about the internet. That's a big statement. There was a really interesting study done on articles that come onto the first page of Google. Okay, now the first page of Google is where everybody wants to be if you're online writing. How do I get my niche website to be in the thing? And this guy, who's a genius, not related to me, he studied 1 million articles that were on the first page of Google for different niches. And he measured the average length of words for each article. Okay? So the normal, when you look online, the average length of an article is between 300 and 500 words, I would say. That, you know, they're quite short, and you know, you guys are different to the older generation, and that your attention spans are a lot shorter than ours are. So 500 words is sometimes quite a struggle. And what he found, very, very interesting, was the average length of an article on the first page of Google, over 1 million things he sampled, was 1,890 words. His name, if you want to look, his name is Brian Deane, D-A-N-E, and he has a website called backlinko.com. And he's only got 39 articles on his website, but he ranks up here, and he posts these amazing videos. He's incredible if you want to learn about online writing. And so, you know, so to me that was really interesting. Like, most people are reading, getting 300 word articles, but the thing that's getting to the top of Google is 1,890, because Google wants to reward quality. Google wants to reward authority, and it's very hard to build authority on 300 words, especially when you're just going for the clicks. And this is actually reflected in our statistics. We have now, I think, about 600,000 unique visitors a month in like the height of the season. Obviously, July is busier than December, which for a foreign language website about a very small country, you know, I'm very, very happy with. But if I look at where the traffic's coming from, we have 55% of our traffic is coming from Google search, because we have got the niche, we've murdered it, we've got to the top of it. Anybody who's looking for anything about Croatia may not find us on the first search, but they'll find us. And because we've written so much, you know, yoga in Croatia, you know, how to cut your nails on Vis, you know, that there's probably an article on the website somewhere out there. So bad examples. And although we are very active on Facebook, and we have 25,000 fans on our main Total Operation News, and we have, you know, our total portfolio of niche websites, we probably have 100,000 fans. We only have about 12 to 15% of our traffic coming from Facebook. And so this brings me to, who is it that you're writing for? And I originally thought the person to write for was the reader, which kind of makes sense. If you're a journalist, you want to get something across. And of course there is an element of that. But I write mostly for the Google God, because I know that if I write for Google and I do it along with what Google's looking for currently, because they always change the rules, then I have more chance of that article being read, not just today when you have that initial share and hit, but it's going to rank somewhere and people are going to search for it again and again. One of the most popular web articles, I was surprised, is when two cellos split up. They announced they were splitting up. His name's Hauser, the guy. We get, it's probably our top 10 articles a day, every day, because people are searching for information, and we must be number one either for his name or for something about that. And so this is an article, a throwaway article that we published, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, that I would expect would have died. But obviously the journalist that did it, the writer that did it for us, has got some sort of keywords in there and so on that it keeps living. So for me, it's, the clickbait thing is easy to do. It's easy to write sensationalist titles, and you'll get lots of hits and you'll get AdSense in the short term. You'll lose your credibility online very quickly. And if you're in a small niche like Croatia, you'll get known as, that's the website that just does sensationalist stuff all the time. Not going to bother clicking that next time. But if you do something that's really, really good quality, then you're going to be number one on Google, and people in the future searching for information about that are going to click on it. So we've just been now in Slavonia, amazing place, a couple of times in the last month, and there's almost nothing written about Slavonian tourism, and it's the most incredible. We had a weekend there 2 weeks ago, and we just got so many things in, from Iločki Podrum to Vučedol Museum to Badanja to going around the Osijek, Vinkovci, all this town, all this stuff. It was amazing. And so I decided to write some articles about various different things. And I wrote an article about Vinkovci, 10 things to know about the oldest continuously inhabited town in Croatia, or it's called, in Europe, sorry. And it's got 1,700 Facebook likes. Now, no article in the history of Vinkovci has ever had that many likes, because nobody knows about it, which is stupid, because it's an amazing place with an amazing story. So, but now when you search for Vinkovci, because more people will as it becomes known, that will be an article that will be very highly up. And these are not clickbait things to see and do at Vinkovci, these are real things. We went to Vučedol. If you've not been to Vučedol, go. It's amazing. Amazing. The museum there, the story, the potential, everything else. And so I did a really huge piece about Vučedol, which the museum loved, and they're all sharing like crazy. But I know that Google will see that as a really interesting, in-depth, quality, authoritative article about Vučedol from a website that Google already knows is interested in quality and niche and everything else. And so I know that that particular article is going to live not as long as Vučedol itself, but it will be up there next year. And people, as more people hear about Vučedol, they will start to search and they will come to that. So that is an article I would say is going to become evergreen. Yeah. Now I could have gone for a sensationalist, this 300 words, click, shared, and I would have probably got more traffic in the short term, but the long-term investment is what I'm interested in, certainly. If you start a website, how do you find stories and how do you get people to read your website? You're starting there. I was sitting in a cafe in Jelsa. Okay, I've done it. Written an article. Who's reading it? Now, if you're writing for a website in Canada that has a network, that's great. But if you're a brand new website, how do you do it? It's what makes anybody? I've got no Facebook likes. I've got no Instagram, whatever. And so how do I do it? And so the way that I do it to get traffic, interesting stories, new lines of inquiry, everything else is, I would take somebody who is a little bit vain, a little bit a bit of self-importance, that has something to say, or is an interesting person, and I would say I would like to interview for our poll. And so you do a really nice feature on them, and then of course, because they're vain, they want to share it. And so they're going to tag you and everything else. And so you get some really good content from somebody who's a lot more famous than you are. And you're writing, and if you ask the right questions, maybe you can get some unique information about that person. And then because they want to tell everybody how amazing they are, then they go ahead and share it. Okay? So this is a way to bring people into your website. And it's not just famous people, but for example, as you know, in Croatia, a lot of people are emigrating, sadly, because there are no jobs here, and there's the corruption and so on, and you can earn more money abroad. And there are no happy stories, or very few happy stories, which is a shame, because there are so many amazing things happening in your country that nobody really knows about. And so I thought it would be interesting to do a series called Croatia's Foreign Entrepreneurs. Okay, with everybody, because I'm an immigrant to this country, you know. I mean, everybody's going to England and Ireland and Germany, and I'm the only idiot coming the other way to live in Croatia. And so I thought it would be interesting, could we find any foreigners who had decided to come to Croatia and start a business here, for whatever reason?